Hey everybody, welcome to the Find and Follow podcast. We're so glad you joined us today for this fun episode helping you find and follow Jesus. I'm Scott, your host, with Craig and Jesse, co-host, with our special guest, JJ. I'm going to get it right, Vancil.
Nailed it.
Yes, JJ. Like, we've been new friends for the last few months, but I never really said your last name out loud, so practicing. But welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you joined us today. As we dive in with the full team today. So we got a lot of words. It took us like 10 minutes to actually get this thing started officially. Trying to cut everybody off so we can talk officially. But we're going to jump into your story, and then you're also with Generation Alive and your work there and what you guys are doing in the Spokane community. And we were just talking movies, and we can talk anything and everything that we want, because this is how this podcast rolls.
Yeah, well, you've been a part of some of our staff conversations. You know we can tangent with the best of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was kind of a similar feel at times, like, we got to get this rolling here,
right.
Which is a good problem to have.
Yeah,
it's better than the opposite, where you kind of don't want to talk to each other and it's hard to get conversation going. So you got anything, just on a personal note, you got anything coming up this summer? As we, I think, are officially hitting summer, you guys as a family.
Oh, absolutely.
Introduce us. You're married. You got some
Yeah,
kiddos.
So my wife Katie and I have been married. We'll celebrate 17 years this summer. And then we have two kids. Owen, who's next week, graduates 6th grade.
Oh, that's big time.
And in Spokane Public Schools, he's going to be a middle schooler next year.
There you go.
He's not a middle schooler this year. So that's kind of feels like a crazy milestone. And then
that's always big. Do they do a ceremonial thing in 6th grade? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, you guys, 7, 8, 9 is middle school?
Just 7, 8 in Spokane.
7, 8.
In Spokane Public Schools. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's changing, but then our daughter Nora is finishing up kindergarten. So we bookended elementary school this year.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not doing like the cap and gown. Hey, no offense. I love the ceremonial, tradition, but cap and gown for every.
For getting out of kindergarten, getting
Well,
out of 3rd grade.
My daughter Jane just graduated the preschool right
I was
here
gonna say
at
it.
Mission Church, and they went all out. And I
They
must
do a
say,
cap.
I
Yeah.
appreciated it.
They get a
It
little
was
paper
delightful.
certificate. They shake a
Okay.
hand. They take a picture.
Delightful.
It's probably
Did you
bigger.
throw? Did you do the tassel?
No, not
Okay.
that.
Almost.
They sang for us.
Yeah. It's
All
a
right.
bigger production
All right.
than probably most colleges do nowadays. So
All right, I shouldn't clown on it too much.
married 2 kids.
Yeah.
And
You asked about summer plans.
do you got anything
Well,
exciting?
so we did just get a tent trailer
Nice.
from Katie's dad. Gave it to us as a family, so we've not taken it out yet. I've had mixed reviews from people say, "Oh, sell that thing as soon as possible." Other people live for it, so we're gonna try it out. We're doing a trip to Montana, West Glacier National Park.
Oh, yeah.
Try that out.
that's
That's kind of like we're going to the major leagues
That's
with
the
this tent
peak.
trailer.
That's awesome.
But we'll put it. We'll be posting it up in the backyard a little bit.
What's your RV background then? You have not done it? No, you have no idea.
What kind of a tow vehicle?
I got an F-150.
Oh,
I got
so
a big
yeah,
enough
it's
truck.
more than enough. Yeah.
I'm not worried about towing it. I think I'm worried about whether or not it'll just be.
If you like it?
Yeah.
Does
Well-
your wife growing up, did they camp, RV?
We're not.
Pitch
I'll
a
be really
tent?
candid. We're not much of a camping family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the weather's going to be the single biggest factor. If the weather's nice, the tent trailer works. If it's not so
Right.
nice, it doesn't work so much.
I actually have a very vivid memory as a kid. We were like in Utah somewhere. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, maybe even younger. And my family had towed a tent trailer, and it was the most gnarly storm
Yeah,
I'd
not
ever
good.
experienced. Rain, thunder, right above us, cracks of lightning. It was crazy. And I'm very scared of that still.
Right?
Are these tent trailers? I mean, do they not hold the weather out very well? Or
Well, the
Well, it's
sides are like,
it's a tent.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
key is tent trailer.
Is it one of the is it one of the ones that tents out?
yeah. Like
Okay, so literally tents out.
You crank it and it builds out.
Okay.
and
In my
then-
mind, I always assumed that the sides were waterproof.
Nope.
Not on the tent ones. And it's usually a
Condensation
mix.
for
And they're
sure.
certainly not
Yeah.
windproof.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of a really nice tent. Like solid base.
It's a nice tent on wheels.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
more amenities and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
I mean, I've done a fair amount of tent camping, so I feel like it would be a step up.
It is a
definitely
step up from a
step up.
tent, for sure.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
it's howling wind and like rain and it's sideways, you're still in a tent area. So Glacier, have you guys been there before?
Never been to Glacier.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
I know.
That's
and we're actually
fabulous.
staying outside of Glacier, just on the west end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what we've done.
We'll camp out. Actually, we're going to a KOA. So even then, it's
Yeah.
you know.
KOA. I think I've been to
We've
that
we've
same
stayed
KOA.
we stayed
All
at
right.
the KOA.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And then we'll day trip into
Perfect.
Glacier. So
Yeah, you'll love it.
yeah, cool.
We
Yeah.
were just recently there.
All right.
It's beautiful.
It's super great. Yeah.
No, I'm stoked.
We were there.
Interestingly enough, this is a total aside, but there's like a I don't even know what to call it. It's like a billboard park on the way to Glacier from Whitefish, and it's like Ten Commandments-esque.
It's very faith-based.
Yes. It was peculiar. I stopped and snapped a couple pictures. It's like you drive through this billboard park, and it's very like almost. It feels a little aggressive, like.
It's kind of a modern rendition of Stations of the Cross.
Yeah. And I was like, who puts this on? Like, oh my
Right?
goodness.
Someone's
Yeah.
living for that
So
park.
look for that. Okay.
Okay,
I
I will
want to
be.
talk about it afterward.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. It is. And then I saw a few of them through Montana. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
you got that from the
Yeah,
park.
like,
You got a copy.
Yeah.
And then Avalanche Lake hike.
Oh,
100%. 100%. Pretty easy. Couple miles maybe, it's uphill to the lake. The lake's beautiful when you get there, but it's easy going. It's not
Yeah.
severe, and you hike along a creek.
Should I be worried about getting eaten by a bear?
Nah.
Nope.
No.
All right.
No.
Not as long as you have a bazooka.
There's so many people and there's so
Does
much
it
going
take a
on.
Make sure to bring the
take out a
bazooka,
bear? Isn't there something a little less intense?
We were thinking bear spray, but maybe bazooka is the better route.
Yeah. It's foolproof.
Bears, as long as you're making noise and there's people on the trail, I mean, very, very slim chance.
Yeah.
We hiked that trail in November. We went to Glacier, and it was like
November?
Yeah, it was the road to the sun was closed, and it was Avalanche Lake is right before that, and there still was. We saw probably a dozen people on the trail.
Yeah.
So you'll be
Sure.
fine.
And you
Sure the
definitely-
park rangers know where the bears are at.
Yeah.
kind
They'll
of
let you know if
generally.
there's a
The
bear
key
sighting.
thing is just making a little noise.
Yeah.
As long as they know you're there and they can move away, they'll leave you alone. But when they get startled or get defensive, that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah, my goal
Road
in
to
life
the
is
Sun
to not get eaten by a bear.
it's open.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
It'll be open.
It was open when we were there. When did we go? It was like a month ago.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Spring breakish.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then if you want to be adventuresome, I don't know about your guys' crew, but if you park at the top at Road to the Sun, there's a great lookout. Then there's a Continental Divide Trail.
Oh, definitely do that.
But the
All right,
start of it,
Avalanche Lake, Continental Divide.
what was the Tom Cruise movie where rock climbing cliffhanger or no?
That's
Oh,
Sylvester
Mission
Stallone.
Impossible.
Oh,
The
yeah.
open to Mission Impossible where he's hanging
Yeah.
from the.
So I can do that.
The trail feels like that. It's about 2 foot wide.
Oh, it
Are
does
you thinking
not.
of Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone?
No.
It's not that steep.
It's a sheer
No,
face
I
up and
can do
down.
that.
There's
I'm-
there's a bolted in cable like handle for the first couple hundred yards.
Nice.
So it's kind of adventuresome, especially with little
I
kids.
I dig that.
But it's worth it. The views are phenomenal.
That's awesome.
No, remember Mission Impossible? Isn't he hanging when he gets the message?
I have never seen any
Okay.
Mission Impossible movie.
All right.
Really?
That's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen.
There's
them
a
all.
lot of them now. I feel like it's too late.
It's not too late. Think about how many Netflix shows you watch.
Jesse,
32
it's
episodes.
never
I'll
too
start
late.
tonight.
Never too late to do the right thing, Jesse.
That's
Never
right,
too late
Jesse.
to watch Tom Cruise.
So,
Yeah.
so let's jump in, JJ.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk vacation
could.
spots
We very
and
well
movies, but we always, when we have guests on, we always love to hear how you found Jesus. What was
Yeah.
your life like growing up, coming to know who Christ is, and so give us the shorter version of your story.
Absolutely. As I was thinking about how to answer that question, I don't know if I necessarily. So I grew up feeling like I always knew Jesus. I don't say that in a like, oh man, I was always a strong follower of Jesus. I think I thought I was a Christian from the time I was a fetus. I mean, I was born in a Christian home. I didn't know anything else. I was raised. My parents are two very devout, very humble, very they're really authentic followers of Christ, and so and they were in ministry. My dad ran. He was a part of Young Life for over 35 years, and so I was raised in many ways, I kind of operated like a PK a little bit, pastor's kid, even though it wasn't vocationally a pastor. So it's just a part of our story. But as I think about my upbringing, I always go to the story of the prodigal son, because obviously that story is about two sons. You have the wayward son and you have the son that stayed. I was the son that stayed. I was in. I never left. I was never rebellious. I never, went off the rails. I didn't have that story. I don't have that testimony, but man, I can tell you that there was deep, almost like because of my faithfulness, God should reward me for this. I don't know if you guys have read the book, The Prodigal God by Timothy Keller.
Yeah.
It's a deeply, it's like that's my story. In many ways, you can avoid Jesus by he says a statement. You can avoid Jesus as your Savior by doing all or not doing all the rules or doing all the rules. Mm-hmm. And I was that kid that was kind of building up like storing up my own like path to salvation through my good deeds because I was in the fold.
Yeah, that self-righteousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that I love that line because that's kind of the story of those two sons.
Right.
Not all the rules and then all the rules.
Yeah.
And you did that even growing up in Seattle, right? Didn't you grow up in Seattle area?
West
Man,
side.
you know, following
It's straight and narrow, baby.
right, straight and narrow.
Yeah.
Even in Seattle, can happen.
So my rebellion was internal. It was never really external. So, growing up a Christian home, right? The challenge is at some point I can't just inherit my parents' faith, right? That's not something that happens. You don't just. It's not
Wait a
passed
minute.
down.
Isn't that what you did, Scott?
Right.
No, you want me to share a few stories?
I can't claim it. I can't claim it, but I tried to and thought that was kind of the journey for me. And then,
So what was a turning point there for you, or a pivot moment?
I was that kid that I knew all the Sunday school stories. I could do and say and sing all the worship songs and do all that, but internally I was not. There was no relationship there. There was no depth. I was following a script that I thought I was supposed to walk through.
Let me ask you this question. How much do you think, looking back on that, was just your youth and your maturing and your growing? Right, as we all look back, go, man, I didn't know squat back then.
Right.
But in the moment, especially like as a 19, 20-year-old dude, you're like, oh, I know everything. I got this put together. And then you look backwards, you go, oh, you didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So how much was just that natural growing, maturing, and how much was more of like a rebellion?
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
don't think
pretend
I
to
would
have
have ever
this.
said it was an intentional rebellion. I wasn't necessarily harboring this resentment. I really wanted to know Jesus. That was a longing of my heart.
Because I wonder about that as a parent, right? And you probably have the same thing too. Is like with my kids, you could speak to this too, right? Like I want them to know Jesus, but I want them to own their own faith.
It has to be.
But how am I seeing that? Is that real? Like they say they want to know God.
Right.
Like is it just immaturity and is part of the journey? I have all that kind of questioning.
This would be my take on that as a dad as well. You can't manufacture it.
No.
You can serve as maybe some of the guardrails, but you cannot manufacture that. You cannot manufacture transformation within the soul.
Yeah. So
Which
true.
I would say is the Holy Spirit's work. So my story is it's in between my junior and senior year of high school. No, great. At this point, I am involved in youth group. I am doing all the right things, saying all the right things, but it's not like it just. Well, what I didn't, I guess, in hindsight, I didn't know what I didn't have, which was this just deep, that abundant life. So in between my junior and senior year, I actually was gonna I was gonna serve at a youth camp. Christian camp, and it was going to do 3 to 4 weeks of volunteer work at this camp. It was called Work Crew, and as part of the work crew for this camp, I had to. They sent a letter out and said, "Hey, in preparation for coming to this, kind of this serve experience, we want you to read the entire book of Psalms before you get here." Right? Cool. So I was a classic procrastinator. So about 2 weeks before the camp, I open up Psalms, and it dawned on me that Psalms is 150 Psalms.
You're like,
Oh no!
I thought this was a
I'm
short one.
I gotta do like 15 a day. You know.
It's like homework. You're like, I thought it was a 1 page. It's a 10 page. I didn't see the zero.
Yes. Yeah. So I was
This isn't Titus, all right? Come on.
This is no Philemon. Yeah. So but I committed to do it. So for those 2 weeks, I remember setting my alarm bright and early. Summertime, by the way, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting up by 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever, which is like crack of dawn for a summer high school student, and began to read and jump into the Psalms. And I would say day 3, day 4, I mean, I'm reading 10 to 15 Psalms a day. And it was like, I called it my Narnia wardrobe moment. Whereas like, as I jumped into the scriptures and the word, it's like, I can't describe it other than that it came alive. It was like that longing. I couldn't get enough, and began to see the picture of it was it really confirms what Hebrews says, the word of God is living and active. It just began to just do work, and my mind was illuminated to just like, the way I've heard it described is that the scriptures are not just, it's not just pearls on a necklace that each book is just on its own, but it's like a chain. These are all connected. There's a story. I was just invited into this story. I can't describe it any other way. And it was like I could not get enough. I think I finished Psalms. I think even before I even went to this serve experience, I had jumped into the Gospels. And by the end of the summer, I had read the whole New Testament. I couldn't get enough. Mm-hmm. Couldn't get enough.
Yeah, it's the power of the Holy Spirit at work in your life, illuminating truth.
And it was like, God speaking that this is who I am. This is real.
How old were you? You were
17, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just church kid for sure. Growing up in that environment, it's so much different than someone who comes to faith later in life, right? Where they have this moment of like, I want to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Whereas you grow up in the church, and it's like, how many times did I respond and say I want to follow Jesus? It's like it's hard for me to pinpoint that exact moment when I was like, I started following Jesus.
Yeah.
But there were times when my faith progressed in these kind of leaps and bounds where it's like, yes, I want to follow Jesus more and in this way. Yeah. So it sounds like that was one of those moments for you.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I'm always interested when I hear your guys' stories. I mean, all three of you have similar stories. I'm the guy that wasn't raised in a church environment, a Christian home of any kind, had a real 180-degree turnaround when I was, 19. But I do know this, that whatever your story is, I mean, my wife's story is very similar to your guys'. Yeah. I mean, she wasn't rebellious. She was a good girl, all that stuff. But she can point to a time when, okay, I'm choosing Jesus. This is me being born again. This is my moment. This is my turning point. And she wasn't turning from drugs and all the kind of stuff that I was turning from when I came to Christ, but it was a definite turning point. When I hear you guys talk about your stories, it makes me wonder, so what do you identify as the moment when you pass from darkness to light, from the kingdom of this world to the kingdom of his Son? I mean, when you read the New Testament, the new birth is described in those categorical terms. We once were this, and now we're this. We passed from death to life, etc. When was that? Because nobody's born a Christian, right? We all have to be born again sometime. For you, it was really early. You were like 4 or something when you first responded. How about you, JJ? Or
I think you said fetal Christianity.
That was a fetal.
Yes,
I heard a sermon in the womb.
I mean, we had an ultrasound. My hand was raised.
Right?
Really?
Yeah.
So the ultrasound is the proof that you actually...
You did 2 kicks, and you're like, yes.
He said, look up at me if you're saying yes to Jesus.
But I think, Dad, that's for you, like that, to your point, yes, we all have had a moment where we've, passed from one kingdom to the other. Sometimes it's hard to really know for sure. But your story is, it's a Thursday night, and a time and a date and a place, and you were at an age physically where you're mature enough to go, I'm done with that old life, and I've resolve some questions that I've had about who God is. I don't know everything, but I'm deciding here. And you have a clear moment where some other people's stories is just as life-changing,
I know
just
it
as transformational. But sometimes it's hard to point to a moment of like, when was the initial? But like for you, JJ, you're pointing to a moment where you had like a growth spurt. You know, like when kids are growing, all of a sudden you turn around, you're like, why are your pants so short? What just happened?
Yep.
And kids they'll grow inches in a couple of months. And that happens in our life spiritually, where you have a summer where it was a spiritual growth spurt.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's hard to point to a moment, but I think it helps us also realize that's important, coming to Christ, acknowledging, but it's also the being filled,
Of course.
continual relationship
Yeah.
with Jesus, empowered by the Holy Spirit, always growing, always being transformed by Christ.
Well, and to your point about being born again, I mean, we're all parents here. We've all experienced the birth of our children. That was a one-time event.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's a one tiny event in the whole course of somebody's life. You know, and so for me, I think as someone who was raised in a Christian faith-filled home and had to kind of discover, who Jesus was in the middle of that, I think it turns much more into kind of moments of growth.
That's a great way to put it. Discover who Jesus is, because it's like you're told to a certain extent
who he is, but it never connects here.
Right, and you have to discover for yourself. And I think there's a point, at least there was for me, where you then consent to that relationship. It's like it's kind of thrust upon you, but then you consent to it, And for me, I honestly cannot pinpoint a time, because there were multiple occasions where I said like, yes, I submit to you, And I can think of some of those as a kid. It's like, just to be sure, because I was kind of a anxious kid. Like, well, I want to be sure, so I'm going to submit again.
But how old are you, Jesse?
36.
Okay, so you were raised in, you were growing up in the mid-90s,
Yep.
right? That's the formational time.
Yeah.
Dude, that was the left behind years.
Right.
It was all about, I gotta say yes, because I don't want to go to hell, because the rapture might happen soon, and I gotta make sure all the time
Yeah.
to just assure myself that I'm good, that I'm in.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was prior to those years, but that was my.
Well, and I think in my mind it was like my faith saved me. I have to have enough faith, so I have to keep at this.
Yeah.
Which is not a good
Yeah.
not a good perspective to have. But that's what it was for me nonetheless, And this as I came to know Jesus, I came to trust more and rely on him more. And that blossomed.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about the journey and the progressive nature of a growing relationship and the discovery process and the maturing process. And that's really, that's very important, and that's really what the Christian life is. That's what it means to be a Christ follower, is that journey. And it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
But just like with natural birth, a baby's either born or it's not born. It's not partway in the womb and partway out.
Right.
It's either in or out of the womb. And so the same thing is true spiritually. Even though it's just a moment, it is the moment that starts the process, right?
Yeah.
A child doesn't grow and develop and mature in the womb. They have to be born for that to happen.
Correct.
Yeah, we can't wander into a
Correct.
faith with Jesus. I guess I decided. I don't know.
Yeah, and part of the reason that's important to me so much, and I bring it up frequently, is because in churches today we have people that I think are just wandering around in Christianity, but they're not actually born again. They're hanging out, they're following the script, as you put it, JJ. But they think they're good. I think it's probably true of most every church, but in certain regions like the Bible Belt, I think it's very true of a lot of people, and it's to me it's tragic, because it's leading them down a deceptive path of thinking, I'm squared away with God, when they're not squared away at all, because they don't actually have a relationship yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for I think anybody listening in, some of us in our stories, like I don't know, like maybe some anxiousness or nervousness. Like I can't exactly point to a date, time, place, but I know I've made multiple decisions, including this morning on my knees. Like, okay, God, I give you my life today, like heart, soul, mind, strength.
Yep.
To have some confidence in that,
Yeah.
and not have a
And that's enough.
nervousness,
Yep.
and that's enough to know, like, it's the grace of God, it's the work of Christ in our lives that saves us. whether we can point to a day or a time or a place. Because I'm sure many people could tell a story like, oh, I said a thing, but I didn't really actually mean it. So I have a date, time, place, but then I know later I have a legit time where I actually surrender my life.
Yeah.
And only God knows when the spiritual transformation happens.
Right.
But it's harder for people that are younger and their stories are more, God was always part of our family and our story. And like, when did I pass from darkness to light? I don't know, 4, 14, 44,
Somewhere in
at
there.
some point. But it's good to have, students, young people, knowing who God is and part of their life. And so let's kind of transition to your work now, because you were involved with Youth for Christ for a long time, helping students. You're now at Generation Alive. Just talk to us about like what you're doing now, but also just kind of your heart for helping activate students and young people into a life of knowing who God is and making some of these decisions.
Hold on, I want to rewind. Where did you get your start in the nonprofit world? Was that with YFC, or was there something before that?
It's great question. So I'll give a whole bunch of context to my story, how I'm arrived at where I'm at right now. So, I grew up, like I said, my dad was in youth ministry from the time I was a child.
So was he like an area director for Young
He's a regional
Life?
director. Well, I mean, he was an area director, when I was younger, but then he transitioned to a regional director. So he actually oversaw all of Western Washington. Great guy to meet, by the way. He lives in Spokane now. He's a mover and a shaker in his 70s now, but just a faithful man that wants to connect people.
He's in his 70s. Man, that's really old.
It's super
People-
old.
He's just getting going.
People whose age starts with a 7. Come on.
Craig just turned 70
I just
on
turned 70.
Tuesday.
Okay, so my parents...
So I'm riffing on your dad, and I don't even know.
My parents refer to old age as the third act.
Exactly.
And the third act is the best act.
Hey,
of
I
any
preached it
movie.
just a few weeks ago. Right in the other room over there. I said, if you're not dead, you're not done.
Yeah,
But you're still
absolutely.
struggling
That's
with the 70s thing.
I am.
Yeah,
It-
he's
it-
still-
it's
he's still
because
working
the
through it.
7.
right. I know. This is
It's
it's
the
hilarious.
first
So when I was
number.
I was a youth pastor, and the senior pastor was a part of their group that provided community for the older folks in the congregation. They called it New Beginnings, and it was 55 years old. And then when he turned 55, it moved to 60 years old.
That's funny.
It just keeps bumping up. It's like 65 is the new beginnings.
This is really easy for me to say as a 39-year-old, but someone said, I don't remember where I saw it, but basically that the joy is tied to accepting our mortality.
Yeah, there you go.
It just is not, like you can try to capture time, stop it, slow it down. I feel that way with my kids, and it's like, actually, I can't. And so how do I steward the moment I have right now versus trying to retain it or capture it?
Absolutely.
Like sand in our hands. It's just not going to...
The Lord actually spoke something to my wife that I think is very profound. She was thinking about this whole aging thing. Both of us are, of course, transitioning into part-time and ultimately full retirement. And she said, the Lord just spoke to me and said, your soul is not old.
Right.
Our bodies age. Our soul doesn't.
Yeah.
I always
Pretty
say,
sure
Great
it's
way to
eternal.
think about it.
yeah, I always say in light of eternity, you're just getting going. When people are
gosh,
like,
yeah, for sure.
I'm 85, cool. I
Awesome.
think you're just getting started.
Yeah.
I heard it's forever, so.
Yeah. So back to raised in this home. I'm one of four kids, and I was really the only kid. Well, I actually probably shouldn't say that because
Just in case one sibling is listening.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's probably not an accurate statement, but I think we all felt kind of that need or desire to go into ministry. Kind of follow through in our parents' footsteps. For me, it landed. All I wanted to do was to be like my dad and do what he did. So he would speak at youth camps, and I would sit in the front row. I'd take notes. I'd give feedback. I'd, study everything he did because that's just what I wanted to do. And so, that was true from an early age. I just would sit in bed and envision me being old enough one day to do what he did. So I graduated high school in 2001, moved here, went to Whitworth, and I was a theology major and a speech and communication major. And that was all designed. I'm going to figure out what I believe and then communicate it well. And so that I graduated in 2005 and immediately had an opportunity to serve as youth pastor at a church in North Spokane called Shiloh Hills Fellowship. And here I am, 22 years old. My wife and I got married right after we graduated college because that's what you do when you go to a Christian college.
And where's she from?
She's from Pullman, Washington,
Okay.
actually. So Eastern Washington gal.
If you don't come out of Christian college with a ring, then you're not doing it right.
Exactly. We need to pray harder. So yeah, I was a youth pastor for 6 years, and halfway through my tenure as a youth pastor, and we had, I was really young and immature, even though I had the skill set. I didn't have a lot of the other stuff. I mean, I'm convinced now if you're going to go to a theology major or go to MDiv, you have to do a business major as well, or business minor, or organizational leadership, because that's the stuff that sinks you. Mm-hmm. So I totally was good at the speaking, the program development, the energy and some faith development, discipleship and stuff like that. I had no idea how to run organizational leadership at all.
Yeah, none of the seminaries and colleges really prepare you for that.
No.
It's all on-the-job training. And,
Right.
and I watch guys over the decades. I've watched guys, some of them figure it out, and then they do well. But then some of them don't, and they crash and burn.
Yeah.
Not because they don't love the Lord or don't
No.
have a calling or a gifting, but the organizational stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're absolutely
it's part
right.
of the structure of American church that lets us down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or not only the church, but the nonprofits, the
But I
NGOs,
think
whatever.
theology, the theology departments around the country should require, hey, before you join this, I would need you to be aware of a few things. One, most of you won't go into full-time ministry, so just be prepared. You might be a barista at Starbucks with $100,000 worth of debt.
Well, hopefully you're maybe a different job.
Yeah, I know. You could, but
using your gifts and talents in different capacities.
Right.
You're a
This-
contractor.
this
or
should
whatever.
not be a. Yeah, I think I just had so many classmates that never went into ministry, but they really loved studying theology. Yeah. It's painful to go into $100,000 worth of debt to debate theology and Calvinism versus Arminianism. That's
I read in a blog article recently that said some universities are now considering some of their degree offerings as borderline unethical because of the cost to what it could potentially yield.
wholeheartedly agree.
like a philosophy major or a history major.
Or a theology major.
Or maybe a theology.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like
Could it be
social
an
services,
addendum?
and you go work for the government, and you're a couple $100,000 in debt because you went
Right.
to a private.
They're,
and then
they're
you
more
work
like
making
those,
nothing.
those liberal arts studies. I mean, social work, you can do all right. But it's
Or
those.
if you get like a government job where it's there's some stuff.
We can name them all.
So what
Yeah.
happened halfway through?
Yeah.
your tenure
So
there?
halfway through my tenure as a youth pastor, I just felt a call on my life to really engage with students that were kind of your under-resourced, the kind of the down and out, the kid that had no one else in their life cheering them on. And I have a story of I was at Northtown Mall in North Spokane, and I was picking something up. That was back in the day when you shopped at malls. It's crazy. And I stumbled upon this kid that I'd actually seen before, and I remembered his name. It was Brad. Hey, it's JJ. You remember me? I think we, some youth event we were at, and he, you could tell he's wearing old clothes, and his you just could tell he's had a hard story, right? And Brad, what are you doing here? He's probably 12, 13 years old. He's walking the mall alone. He goes, well, it's my birthday. And I just broke. And I was like, what are you doing alone walking the mall on your birthday? And he said, my parents are drunk or they left the house or whatever. I just wanted to do something. I was like, well, Brad, we're going to get some ice cream. So we can get some ice cream. And Brad became my little buddy. And he came to youth group. He's my sound guy for the next several years. I mean, he came to every camp, and it was like my heart always just deeply bled for those kids that are walking through the mall alone on their birthday. And so I felt like that's who God had called me to serve alongside and minister. So that transition, I lived with that call and implemented some of that stuff within the youth ministry. But then the opportunity came up to work for Youth for Christ. So Youth for Christ here in Spokane for many, many years had been working in low-income, under-resourced communities, walk alongside kids that are walking alone on their birthday. And so that's where I stepped in and served as a job popped up, and I served as the West Central Neighborhood Director for 5 years. And yeah, just had a really beautiful time serving there. Really hard. I mean, gosh, I would say working with kids in that context, it's like sweeping water uphill. You're making progress, but if you stop, it all goes back downhill. And there's a work of God in that process. The main thing, the best advice I ever learned in that is you don't lower the bar of expectations. You just extend the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good.
And so, halfway through that time, everything changes about halfway through. And it's not because I'm getting bored, but it's a journey of discovery of what God's called me to. I just found that I found where my giftings really lied was in not shepherding sheep, but in shepherding shepherds. Began to really find a lot of joy in life in equipping and empowering staff and leaders to do the work more so than the on the ground work, and largely just because it was exhausting. and found I was really good at the systems development. I was really good at organizational stuff. I was really good at casting vision and getting people on board and recruiting volunteers. And so I just found myself like moving towards opportunities where I could oversee a whole organization and steward a whole organization. So that led to actually an opportunity for me to move to Seattle, where I felt, I could go back to my roots, kind of take on the big city, and I became the executive director of Seattle Youth for Christ in 2015. So family moved over there, and had a wonderful experience. Learned a lot, challenges, lots of discovery of what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. But God used me, used our team to do some cool things over there. I learned a lot as a nonprofit leader, just really cut my teeth and, trial and error and all sorts of things. The crazy thing is, even though we loved Seattle, and actually our experience in Seattle was really positive. We didn't return to Spokane because we were trying to leave Seattle. But we really, the long short of it is that we could never shake the reality that Spokane was home. Even though everything, we had the trifecta in Seattle. We had a home, we had community, we had jobs. And
when we first met...
Oh, that's right. We've got the connection.
Yeah, we got the connection because you said you came over here, and I'm like, what's, Generational Live, but then where were you at in Seattle? Just trying to make a connection. And you're like, U District. I go, I got a buddy who lives.
That's right.
Come to find out, JJ lived, and your parents,
my
right?
Parents, yeah.
Lived across the street from my good buddy and his family, Josh Epperson. And so he's like, I know.
I actually didn't. They moved there.
Oh, did they?
After we left.
After you left.
Yeah, but I was aware of the Eppersons. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
I knew Josh.
Yeah, we're vacationing next week
fun.
together. So
Please say
yeah,
hi.
it's such a small world as we're in Spokane Valley having this conversation about people. And so you guys come over, and you came. You said it was real tough because you came right as COVID started.
Yeah,
So that's a great time to move and start working with youth in schools.
Yeah, right. Well, so I had stayed connected to Generation Alive. We were doing some stuff with Generation Alive while I was here in Spokane, and I just had a loose connection to GA while I was in Seattle. And
what does GA do, just in case anybody's unaware?
Generation Alive it's a youth-serving organization that seeks to empower youth to engage the needs of their community through service opportunities and acts of compassion. So our new tagline, that we're rolling with is we're activating youth to lead with compassion. So 3 buzzwords there. We activate. We don't empower. We actually activate. So activate means there's latent power within them that we're unleashing, unlocking, awakening. We're equipping leaders. That's what we want to build: is generous, compassionate, kind leaders within every sector of society. But then also, one of the things we're passionate about is that we actually help move a generation towards compassion being their lead instinct. So So when you drive by somebody in need, your first instinct, you lead with compassion. That's where you go, your heart bleeds. I got to help. Sometimes you can't, but I got to help, rather than rolling your eyes and going, you shouldn't be homeless, this, that. So and then compassion, this idea of learning how to suffer with people,
It's when you see Brad at the mall.
When you see Brad at the mall,
You go,
do
my
something.
heart breaks, and then we're going to get ice cream.
Yeah,
and we're gonna
compassion
go.
is you do something.
Yeah.
It's not just I feel bad.
Right.
Gosh, that's got to be so hard for them. It's doing something. So we activate youth to lead with compassion. So I loved that vision and mission. I'm a student of youth ministry, was raised in it. I believe that youth ministry, is an incredibly valuable part of the church. I also believe that young people and the culture has radically changed. The model and the message hasn't, or no, the mission and the message hasn't, but the model could be outdated of a ministry that's built on entertainment, a ministry that's built on create a youth group so cool and worship so exciting and a talk so engaging that kids will show up, choose to come. But the reality is today kids don't need entertainment. That's not their need. It's not their core need. Now, relationships are their core need. Faith and meaning and value and belonging is a core need. But entertainment is not. And there's no way that a youth ministry can compete with Netflix, YouTube, TikTok, you name it. And there's billions and trillions of dollars being poured into algorithms to capture the heart and minds of kids. So we can't compete with that. So Generation Live is predicated on the model that young people want to do something important. And that's how we engage them around acts of compassion, that they can do something and be part of a cause that matters and makes a tangible difference in the lives of others. So when I looked at this idea of making a transition towards an organization that wasn't overtly faith-based in terms of its outward work in the schools, but I saw it as a tool that God wanted to use to engage a generation of young people around ways that they wanted to be engaged. So, and I went to my dad and I shared, hey, I have this opportunity, because crazy, Generation Live, there's a long story there, but they pursued me. I didn't pursue the role. And so it kind of came out of the blue, and God had just made it really clear this is the right move. And I went and processed with my dad, and he just said, that really feels like the youth ministry of the future. He goes, that just makes sense. And so he goes, you're taking it, obviously. So, and I've always been somebody who wants to be I've shared a lot of quotes, but one that I always land on is, it's actually from Wayne Gretzky. And he says, skate to where the puck is going, not where it is. So I've always wanted to be somebody that's thinking outside, okay, who are we in 10 years? And how do we position ourselves to be relevant then? And so that's what led, a decision to run Generation Alive. And, even that name, Generation Alive, we all know you find life, and Jesus is really clear. You find life when you don't live for yourself. And so we want to raise up a generation who's alive.
Yeah. That's great.
Well said. Yeah, that's. I think these are things that a lot of people are thinking about, especially in terms of youth ministry. I mean, we know the statistics, right? It's something ridiculous. Like 50% of students leave the church after they graduate high school. Abysmal. It's absolutely abysmal. So we're thinking about these things, and how do we re-engage this generation that is, I think, feeling this existential angst and this anxiety about life and wanting meaning rather than fun, because they've been given it. They drink fun from a fire hose,
right,
their entire life.
So much so it's not even that fun anymore.
Yeah, it's like fun has become boring,
right,
and they're seeking something else. So I think you are absolutely 100% accurate when you say that. And as someone who's worked in nonprofit and traditional church ministry settings, those are things that I think about. Those are things that, in terms of youth culture, like how do we harness both of these ideas and begin to migrate and navigate towards something. I think, like you said, this is a perfect expression of, something that young people are really looking for. And will find fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if somebody's listening in and is like all of what you're saying is resonating with them, and they're at a place where they're at a school or they're at a PTA, part of a school or a different organization, like how do people take some action if someone's listening in or like, oh, I know somebody, they would probably love this. Like, how do they partner with Generation Alive, and what do they do to take a next step to go, okay, I'm in. Like, yes, activate some youth so they're not just entertained and wander from faith, but like move to compassion and serving and growing leadership. What do they do?
It's a great question, and this promotion is brought to you by Swell Coffee.
We now break for our advertising sponsor.
If
Swell wanted to sponsor the podcast, we might open up a sponsorship opportunity.
All right. We were a highly relational organization, and we got a relational team. And so, if you're hearing me and you're like, I gotta get involved, the highest priority for us would be, let's go to coffee or let's get a phone call and let's just get to know each other. And we want to curate an engagement strategy that fits you and your life. There's very rarely a one size fits all. We don't have this volunteer sign up form and then we just place you into this role. There's all sorts of ways. So if you're an educator and you're at a school, we would love to spend some time with you and learn how we can serve alongside you and bring our program into the school. If you're a parent of a student and who's angsty and is struggling, we'd love to talk about ways that you can engage them in different ways to serve.
And you guys have like a summer camp for kids, right?
We got to serve the city summer camp. We're exploring all different ways that we can provide opportunities for kids to get involved in things that matter. Our camps are one of those. Regretfully, all of them are full for this summer. So not regretfully, it's a great thing. Yeah, but if you're listening, we don't have a spot for your kids. Yeah. But definitely stay on the radar. Stay on the radar. Yeah.
Moving forward. And I'll link all your guys' website.
Perfect.
They can find more information on there. And I've been able to spend some time with your guys' team the last few months, and you guys got a great team.
It is a great team.
That really is. You guys been building for the last couple years, really growing the team and doing some fun stuff to engage students and get active in our community. And it's really cool.
Yeah, and so just clarity around kind of what we do. We say, hey, we activate youth to lead with compassion, but what does that actually look like? And this, kind of the low-hanging fruit that we've pressed into has been working with running school-based programs. But man, there's a huge opportunity. People ask us all the time, "Are you a Christian organization?" And I go, "We're absolutely rooted in the teachings of Jesus, but we're faith-based, but we're school-safe." Is one of the phrases we use. But then our work will probably never necessarily move. I shouldn't say never, but it probably won't move towards maybe a evangelistic in nature, but it's a great opportunity for discipleship. Really, our heart would be actually for us to not be the ministers, but if we were to work with the youth group here at Mission Church, it would not be us coming in to run a rally. It would us be equipping and activating your students to be the hands and feet of Jesus. I think that's the future of youth ministry. Is actually, I'm going to get my preach on a little bit here, is actually, I think there's a misnomer within youth ministry because we've built this model that you get a bunch of college age and above youth pastors that are cool, hip, and fun, and they become the ministers of youth. But actually the original intent of youth ministry was that it would be youth's ministry. That the work of youth group and youth ministry here should be about equipping and training and inspiring young people to learn how to live out, live and serve as the hands and feet of Jesus in their own context, that they become the ministers within their school. That the group of students that are here that go to university, high school, that they see mission within every day. When they walk through the doors of the school, they pray for God to help them be salt and light. It's not about how many kids can I bring to youth group. Maybe youth group is not going to ever be huge anymore. Maybe there's this, widespread relational army of kids that see their value in, I can love and serve my school and those that desperately need belonging and care right now. So anyway, youth ministry, not youth ministry.
Yeah. Anybody listening in can go, I don't know if JJ likes youth and believes in the next generation. Like, it is awesome to hear your heart and your passion for letting God's kingdom unleash in so many different ways and being involved. It's needed. I with 3 kids, 3, fusion-aged kids, I'm always like, hey, when you go, it's not about what you can get out of it. It's like what you can give and who you can minister to. And when dropping them off at school, like, you're the light and love of Jesus. Go, and it's not just English and math and, wood shop. It's you're doing other stuff there as well. And just want them to know that. Because I think we all of us have a tendency to underestimate the capability of students and even young kids to what they can do, their gifts and talents, their insights, even some of their energy, and they can do some amazing things. And how do we do that well with appropriate boundaries, but then also unleashing them a bit?
Yeah, I had. And you can cut me off if we need to be wrapping up.
This is a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah,
so
okay. This is Joe Rogan.
Yeah, we just keep we order lunch in.
Yeah.
We just keep it rolling. No,
Well,
we're landing the plane here.
Let's land. But I do want to share this just to piggyback off that. So several years ago, I just was in a season. I was praying. I don't know if you've heard you pray 9:38. I don't know if that rings a bell. Matthew 9:38 is pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers in the fields. Right, the harvest is plentiful. So I actually was encouraged by somebody to pray that. They set an alarm every day at 9:38 in the morning. So actually, in the middle of a meeting, my phone would go off, and I'd literally just commit, we're going to pray right now. Now, I'd have to read the room, whether or not this is the right environment. We pray that, and I was praying it for months at a time, every day. And then I was in this kind of season where I was just really journaling, praying, meditating, and was thinking through that verse, and then God just placed it as clear as day, this thought. And the thought was, what if the very laborers you're praying for? Because when you're a youth ministry person, you're thinking of adults.
Yeah, come help me with these kids.
I need some adult volunteers and college-age interns to be volunteers and leaders for this. And God was like, what if the very laborers you're working for are actually the kids? And it was just a paradigm shift.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like it.
So.
Yeah, super fun.
Even middle school students?
Even 6th grade,
Even
7th grade boys?
Seriously. Well, I think here's what we do within church is we go, okay, I'm going to get our leadership team, and you're going to, you got to come to youth group, you got to go to Bible study, come to Sunday school, and then you can be a student leader if you do all those things. You know what a student leader is? You get to check everybody into youth group. Kids are like, oh, where do I sign up?
Right. I think I could do more than that.
Right.
I have
so
more potential.
we just have built this model where, we kind of wait for them to be old enough to be leaders. I mean, maybe they're ready. Maybe they're not ready, but they'll never be ready.
Yeah.
So anyway, there we go. I'm done.
Well, all of us adults are always ready and capable of
for sure.
leading and doing so. And then, did I see you guys have a podcast coming out, sharing some of these amazing stories of kids?
We do have a podcast coming up. Yep.
When does that launch?
Yeah, so it launches this month.
Okay.
It's called The Kid Next Door.
Cool.
And just envision that phrase, right, of a crotchety old man, not you, Craig.
And not your dad.
And not my dad.
Not
well,
the
maybe.
7-year-olds.
Maybe. No, but basically like, kids.
Right.
They're ruining... we're toast, with them in charge, and really flipping the narrative that actually this generation wants to do something, and they have the gift of technological capability to start a movement that really could change the world. So the Kid Next Door is going to be inspiring stories of compassionate kids.
Cool.
So
we'll be looking forward to that, and just thank you for sharing your heart and being on the podcast today, and really kind of helping to challenge us and I think encourage us with maybe some new thinking about how to activate youth and what youth ministry looks like in the church world and in the kingdom of God and in our community. Thanks to you for leading Generational Live and what you guys are doing in our community. And so hopefully we can continue to do some fun things with our students here. And
let's do it.
Hopefully some people listening in reach out and get in touch with you guys. And so thanks for being on the podcast, sharing your story. Scott. Have fun at Glacier, because that is like
We will.
heaven on earth.
We
So.
will. I've heard that.
All right. Thanks, JJ, for being on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We're glad that you're here. Hopefully today was helpful for you to find and follow Jesus. We'll see you next time.